Grief is such a difficult aspect of anybody's life. Understanding that it's not the absence of Christ in our lowest moments, but it's there that He is the brightest for us. My name is Father Flavianos Katerinakis. I'm the assistant priest here at the Greek Orthodox Cathedral of St. Paul in Hempstead, Long Island. Ordained into the diaconate on the feast of Prophet Elias. I was a deacon for almost a year, and then I came back from Thessaloniki after the Archbishop had sent me to Greece. Then I found out that I was getting ordained into the priesthood on the feast of Saints Peter and Paul, and that was a huge deal for me because Father Elias Villas and Presbytera Melanie had asked me to be involved with Camp St. Paul, and I love it. Youth ministry has always been a huge source of not only comfort for me when I was growing up, but now to be able to give back in that same regard. St. Paul kind of took on a new light for me. I grew up listening to the epistles. I knew what a beautiful figure he was, his conversion, the teachings that he gives to us so beautifully. When I came to St. Paul and found out this was going to be my assignment, my first as a priest, I didn't know what to say because I knew this church had a beautiful history. I knew the church was beautiful in itself. I still find myself looking at all the iconography on Sunday. Sometimes, it just takes your breath away. To express the gratitude that I have for a community like this, it has been nothing short of, I don't know if beautiful is even the right word, but it has been beautiful. I felt fully embraced, fully welcomed, and especially in a world without my parents, that means a lot to me. And I think, God had His hands in all of this, and I'm grateful that my path brought me here because I can't imagine having started such an important milestone in my life for the church anywhere else. And so I'm so grateful that the Archbishop, Father Elias, these decisions were made to send me here to fulfill, a vacancy that was needed and to be under Father Dimitri and to, again, be around so many amazing people who have just embraced me as one of their own has been such a beautiful journey. And I'm so excited to see where the road leads. A lot of people, expect the Platitera, the Virgin Mary with her arms wide open with Christ in her lap to be over the altar. But in the Byzantine churches in Constantinople, this was actually the common occurrence to see the resurrection above the altar. And, we're blessed here to have a miraculous icon of the Virgin Mary. And when the ladies Philoptikos had it in mind about doing these beautiful mosaics, what they thought was have a shrine dedicated to the Panagia. And so all the icons on the other side of the church depict not only her life, but we have a beautiful mosaic of the Platitera, and that is what felt most appropriate to honor not only the sacredness of this miraculous icon, but also to give a fitting home for such an icon that so many people come to and flock to pray to and find healing in as well. I grew up in Houston, where I was born and raised, and I lived there until I went to seminary in Boston. I grew up serving on the altar from the time I was 6 until I graduated high school, so around 18 years old. Young men to be inspired to go to the priesthood is first and foremost to let them feel like they have a place in the church, to let them feel valued, and then most importantly, to listen to them. Obviously, we want and need men in the church to serve as clergy, but we also don't want it to be a forced thing. And I think really embracing the young men who come on the altar as altar servers, like making sure they feel loved and welcomed, and to explore that passion of serving the Lord, and then to find out, is it something they feel called to do after they graduate high school? If it's meant to be, God will bring you to it the way that thank God, brought me to, this path. But I think just making them feel valued, making them feel appreciated, talking to them about the school in Boston, our beloved school on the Holy Hill, Holy Cross, letting them know that it's there as a beacon of hope for them, and just to let them feel like it is a worthy calling, and to be present for them in whatever questions they have, so that, God willing, if they do feel the calling from the Lord, that they feel supported and they know that we're with them every step of the way. It always was something I thought about in the back of my mind, but my mom wanted me to go and explore the world and be sure, which I'm grateful that I did. I worked in the world for about 12 years before I heeded the call, and what was really the final push for me was the loss of my parents, first my mom and then my dad, and sitting in the intensive care waiting room with a priest who had come to read the departure of the soul prayers for my mom. It was in that moment, as tough as that conversation was, that it kind of ignited something within me that made me realize I want to be in the exact same shoes as this priest who had also recently gone through a significant loss in his own life, and to be able to help somebody in these moments of struggle and pain and that feel overwhelming. I wanted to be able to be present for them and help them know that not only is the church with them, but that Christ is with them as well. Grief is such a difficult aspect of anybody's life. When I experienced my own significant loss in my life, it was remembering the shortest sentence in the New Testament, which is Jesus wept. And the realization that Christ himself, who, you know, that sentence came in regards to his friend Lazarus, who lay in the grave 4 days. He knew that he was going to raise him from the dead, but he still cried because he saw firsthand the separation that we all experienced because of the sin in the garden. And how does that help us? I think it helps because it's a realization of what Christ did for us. In the icon behind me above our altar of the Anastasy, the resurrection, you see that glory of Christ, and you see him grabbing Adam and Eve and not just holding them by the hand, but yanking them from their wrist, because why? Our hands can slip. Grabbing them by the wrist assures that he'll never let go. And it's that realization that got me through my own grief and how I try to help others through theirs, in this understanding that it's not the absence of Christ in our lowest moments, but it's there that he is the brightest for us, and trying to connect those dots and helping people understand that while Christ wept, we weep and he grieves with us. We don't, as St. Paul reminds us so beautifully, we don't grieve as those with no hope, because as we see in that beautiful icon behind me, there is hope in the resurrection, and we remember what Christ did for us, so that the grief from the losses that we experience in this life don't get the final say. Death doesn't get the final say. And when we chant so beautifully, Christ is risen, we know that that hope and that glory is what we're all aiming for, and especially in the moments when we're grieving. The way that we discern God's presence in some of our most challenging times is, first and foremost, pray. Tendency, of course, to pray when things are bad. Also remembering to pray when times are good. I think we want like this clear sign that God is there. And I think the important thing through that prayer is to remember and to be on the lookout for little things. There's little moments that are going to come in our life that in the moment they may not seem like God's presence, but then when you look back, you realize that God had his hand in everything. And one of my favorite examples is famous Orthodox therapist talked about God's tapestry, and how, the tapestry on the top looks beautiful, but on the bottom, of course, where all the pieces are woven together, it's not so beautiful. But it takes that weaving together to make that beauty that's on top. And I think that's how we have to think of God's presence in our life. There are times when he's weaving these pieces of tapestry together and we don't see it, but the beauty comes at the end. And so we try to stay hopeful and realize that even when it seems like God is silent, he's doing beautiful, amazing work behind the scenes that ends up leading to a beauty that we'll never be able to fully thank him for. So he's become very popular, especially with the movie, but Saint Nektarios, I think the reason for that is he went through a lot in his life. He suffered a lot. He was persecuted a lot. And not that I've been persecuted, but I try to emulate the man that he was. Not only is he a modern day saint, but he never lost faith. We talk about going through hard times and struggling, and Saint Nektarios, even in the pain of his cancer, never turned away from the church, even prayed more fervently. And so for me, it's an inspiration, because this world is difficult. And even Christ told his disciples and us, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, for I have overcome the world. And I think Saint Nektarios emulated that. He was persecuted by people that he never expected to, and somehow he held that light of Christ within him. And so it's a reminder for me, not only as a person in the world, but now as a clergyman, of there's going to be times that I may not always say or do the right things, but if I keep Christ within me and emulate that light and love, then at the end of the day, that's what matters. And so I try to hold him close and emulate who he was, not only as a person, but now as a beloved and cherished saint of our church.